My name is Alexander. I'm 42 years old, living in Moscow, working in it. I've always been a man of routine. Wake up, check emails, attend endless meetings, come home, have dinner, maybe watch some series before bed. Life had a rhythm, and I liked it that way. I thought I had everything I needed: a stable career, a comfortable apartment, and Marina, my wife, the woman I had been with for over a decade. We met when I was 28, young and full of what I thought was love, and for years, I believed we had a life that others envied. We married, had 2 kids, and settled into the patterns of our life, small routines that felt safe, predictable, and normal. I've never been the type to notice small signs. Maybe that's why this hit me so hard. I was proud of our marriage, or at least proud of believing it was solid. I never imagined betrayal. I never imagined that Marina could, or would, look at someone else the way she used to look at me. It started with subtle changes. She became distant. I noticed it in her eyes, in the way she lingered on her phone, in the sudden, almost apologetic smile she gave when I caught her staring at nothing. I tried to rationalize it, telling myself I was imagining things. Work stress, parenting stress, maybe she was just tired. But a part of me, a quiet, anxious part, whispered that something wasn't right. I first suspected she was seeing someone when I found a receipt from a cafe I'd never heard of, dated on a weekday morning when she was supposedly at work. She laughed it off when I asked, but the way her hands trembled as she handed it back told me more than her words ever could. I didn't want to believe it, not at first. I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, to assume I was overthinking, to cling to the illusion of our normal life. Then came the messages. I wasn't snooping, not really, at least, that's what I told myself, but one evening, she left her phone on the table while making dinner. A message popped up from someone named Dmitri. I don't even remember what it said, just a casual, intimate familiarity that made my stomach drop. I froze, staring at the screen like it held the answer to a question I had never wanted to ask. I felt betrayed in a way that was almost physical. My hands shook, my heart pounded. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I confronted her that night. I tried to keep my voice steady, tried to ask calmly, "Is there someone else?" She froze. I'll never forget the silence that stretched between us, the look in her eyes, that mixture of guilt, fear, and a strange defiance. She didn't answer immediately, and when she finally spoke, it wasn't the words I expected. She didn't deny it, not exactly. She admitted that she felt neglected, that she found attention elsewhere, and that I had been too absorbed in my work and my routines to notice. She cried, I cried, but the words she said were like acid. They burned through the years of shared life and memories, leaving raw, exposed wounds. I don't know how long I sat there after she left the room. I just stared at the couch, at the spot where she had been, feeling a mixture of anger, sorrow, disbelief, and a numb sort of detachment. Everything I had believed about our marriage, about our love, about her, suddenly seemed fragile, almost meaningless. I went to bed that night feeling hollow, as though someone had pulled out the center of my chest and left an empty shell. The following days were a nightmare of routine broken into jagged pieces. I watched her move around the apartment, laughing at things that now felt like betrayals, seeing her smile in ways that used to be reserved for me. I would catch myself staring at her phone, imagining the texts I hadn't read yet, the conversations that were happening in secret. I tried to talk to her, to understand, but every sentence felt like treading water in a storm I couldn't escape. I started questioning everything: my self-worth, my desirability, even my judgment. How did I not see it? Was I so blind, so wrapped up in my own life that I ignored the signs? I went back through memories, looking for cracks I hadn't noticed, trying to pinpoint when she changed, when she started seeking someone else. And the worst part, the absolute worst, was that I loved her. I loved her despite everything, and that love was now tangled with hurt, betrayal, and the knowing fear that it could never be the same again. At work, I tried to immerse myself in projects, in code, in deadlines, but every success felt hollow. Every email I sent, every meeting I attended, was overshadowed by her absence, by her presence with someone else in my mind. I started sleeping poorly, waking up in the middle of the night, replaying moments, analyzing tones, words, gestures. My friends noticed. Some asked if everything was okay. I lied, of course. I said work stress. I said life was tiring. I couldn't bring myself to tell them that my wife had betrayed me, that the person I trusted more than anyone else had chosen someone else, even for a fleeting moment of attention. Then came the confrontation I hadn't anticipated. I followed a thread of intuition, a sense of inevitability that told me I needed to see it for myself. One evening, I went to a cafe she claimed to be meeting a colleague, and there he was, the man from her messages. Mid-30s, charming, laughing at something she said. I froze at the sight, a spectator to a life I thought was mine. She saw me immediately, of course, and the way her smile faltered, the way her eyes darted to mine, was a punch straight to the gut. I didn't approach. I couldn't. I turned and walked away, my hands shaking, my chest tight, my mind racing with questions, with despair, with the unbearable clarity of what had happened. Since that day, nothing has been the same. We live in the same apartment, eat at the same table, and speak the same words, but the trust is shattered. I don't know if she regrets it. I don't know if she feels the weight of what she did, and I don't know if I can forgive her, or if I even want to. All I know is that every day, I wake up feeling the sharp edge of betrayal, and I wonder if this is the life we were meant to have, or if it's just a painful lesson in how fragile love can be when taken for granted. I still love her. That's the cruelest part. Even as my mind tells me to leave, to protect myself, my heart stubbornly clings to what we had. I don't know if we'll ever recover fully. I don't know if I should. But I write this here, on Reddit, because maybe, somewhere, someone will understand the hollow ache of loving someone who has already chosen someone else, even if only for a moment, even if only for a fleeting thrill. The days after that cafe encounter were worse than I could have imagined. I wandered through the apartment like a ghost, half expecting her to reach out, to apologize, to explain, but she didn't. She moved around with a strange ease, as if nothing had changed, and I hated her for it. Every smile, every casual laugh at the dinner table felt like a reminder of the betrayal I had witnessed. I started sleeping in the spare bedroom, not because I wanted distance, but because I couldn't bear to see her lying next to me, pretending everything was normal. Work became a blur. I would sit at my desk staring at lines of code that made no sense, my mind replaying the cafe scene over and over. Every time the phone buzzed with a new message, my heart skipped, expecting it to be from her or him. I couldn't focus, I couldn't eat properly, and I found myself walking home slowly, just to delay the moment when I would face her again. I thought about confronting her directly, demanding answers, needing to hear the details of the who, the when, the why. But every time I opened my mouth, the words stuck in my throat. I didn't want to know. I feared knowing. And yet, the ambiguity was worse. The what-ifs became a daily torment. What if it's more than I saw? What if she's been seeing him for months, maybe years, and I was too blind, too preoccupied to notice? What if the love I thought was ours, the life we built together, was never really hers? I tried to talk to my friends, but they didn't understand. Maybe it's a phase, they said. Maybe she's just lonely. Lonely, that word hit me like a slap. Lonely? We had 2 kids, a home, shared routines, shared dreams. How could she feel lonely with me? And yet, I had to admit, I had been distant. I had been too focused on work, too absorbed in the minutiae of life to see the cracks forming in the woman I loved. That realization hurt almost as much as the betrayal itself. I began to observe her more closely, a habit I hated but couldn't stop. The way she checked her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. The way she laughed at jokes I didn't hear. The way her eyes lit up when she spoke to someone new on the phone. The way she lingered on messages that weren't mine. Every detail became evidence, proof that my life with her had shifted into a space I didn't recognize. I found myself revisiting old memories, searching for signs I might have missed. I remembered the way she had become distant after our second child was born, the way she would sigh when I suggested spending weekends together, the way she sometimes fell silent when I tried to talk about our future. At the time, I had brushed it off, too tired, too busy, too complacent to see the truth. And now, I paid the price for that complacency with an aching heart and a fractured trust. Evenings became unbearable. I would sit alone, staring at the glow of my laptop, pretending to work, while she was in the next room, presumably with him. The apartment felt smaller, suffocating, haunted by memories and the knowledge of what was happening behind closed doors. I stopped going out. I stopped caring about appearances. The routine I once cherished now felt like a cage, locking me into a life I couldn't bear and couldn't leave. I tried to forgive her in my mind, imagining scenarios where she was remorseful, imagining conversations where we could rebuild what was lost. But every time I pictured it, the betrayal clawed its way back in, sharp and relentless. Forgiveness seemed impossible, not because I wanted revenge, but because the intimacy we shared had been violated in a way that words could not repair. And yet, despite everything, I couldn't stop loving her. I hated myself for it. I hated the way my thoughts circled around her, how every smile, every glance, still made my chest tighten. I hated how her absence in those moments with him left me yearning for her presence. It was a cruel paradox, to feel the deepest love and the sharpest pain simultaneously. I realized, slowly, that I had become a prisoner of my own mind. Every memory was tinged with suspicion. Every interaction became a test. Even the smallest kindness from her felt calculated, and I hated myself for not trusting her. But the truth was undeniable. Trust was broken, and without trust, love becomes a fragile, dangerous thing. Sometimes, late at night, I imagine leaving, packing my bags, taking the kids, starting over somewhere far away where no one knows what happened. And then I see her face, the way it used to light up when she first saw me, and I pause. The thought of abandoning her, of abandoning us, is unbearable, and yet, staying feels unbearable too. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if we will survive this, if our marriage can recover, if I can learn to live without suspicion, without constant fear, without the gnawing ache in my chest. I only know that every day is a battle, between love and betrayal, between hope and despair, between the life I thought I had and the life I am forced to confront. And so I write this here, not for advice, not for sympathy, but because it is the only place I can confess the truth without pretense. I love her, and she has broken me. I am trapped in a life that feels like a nightmare, yet I cannot leave. And every day, I wonder if this is punishment, fate, or simply the cruel reality of loving someone who chose someone else, even for a fleeting moment. The mornings were the hardest. Waking up in the same bed with her, hearing her breathing beside me, pretending that nothing had changed, felt like a cruel joke. I would lie there, staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks, trying to remember what it felt like to trust her completely. There was a time when I could have told her anything, a time when her touch calmed me, when her smile made the whole world seem lighter. Now, even the memory of that comfort felt like a betrayal in itself, because it reminded me of what I had lost. I tried to talk to her again, not about Dmitri, not directly about the betrayal, but about us, about how distant we had become, about the silence that had grown between us like a living thing. She would nod, say she understood, but there was a coldness in her eyes, a detachment that told me nothing had changed. I began to wonder if she ever loved me the way I loved her, or if love, for her, had always been something I imagined more than she felt. Our children noticed, of course. Kids are perceptive in ways adults try not to see. My youngest, little Anna, asked me why mommy seemed sad sometimes, and I had no answer. My oldest, Ivan, began asking questions about fairness, about why people sometimes hurt each other even when they love each other. I tried to give them explanations they could understand, but how do you explain adultery to an 8-year-old without shattering the innocence of their world? I found myself withdrawing, isolating, pretending everything was fine while inside I was collapsing piece by piece. I started keeping a journal, though I never intended anyone to read it. I needed to pour out my thoughts, to capture the whirlwind of anger, shame, grief, and lingering love that filled me every day. Writing became a kind of therapy, a way to make sense of the chaos inside my head. Sometimes I would write about her, about the way she used to laugh, about the early days of our relationship, about the first time I realized I loved her. And then, abruptly, I would write about Dmitri, about the calf, about the way betrayal had become a living thing in our apartment. I wrote until my hand ached, until the words blurred together, until I could feel the knot of despair loosening just a little. I started noticing things I had never noticed before, subtle behaviors, gestures, and patterns that I had ignored in the past. The way she would excuse herself to run errands with a hurried smile. The way she sometimes lingered on social media, scrolling through feeds I had no interest in. The way she occasionally glanced at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Each detail became a clue, a piece of a puzzle I was terrified to complete. And yet, I couldn't stop. I had to know, even if knowing hurt more than ignorance. Sometimes I imagined confronting her publicly, exposing the betrayal in front of friends and family, making her feel the same shame and panic I felt. But the idea never lasted more than a few seconds. I didn't want revenge. I wanted her to come back to me, to choose me again, to rebuild what we had. And that desire, foolish and painful as it was, kept me trapped. Every interaction, every word, every moment together was colored by the knowledge that she had once chosen someone else. I started to question myself more and more. Was I not enough? Had I failed her somehow, failing to notice her loneliness, failing to give her the attention she needed? I went over every conversation, every argument, every silence, looking for the moment I had gone wrong. And the more I searched, the more I realized that perhaps love isn't always enough, that people can betray not because they hate, but because they are seeking something they think they are missing, something I was too blind to provide. I stopped talking to friends about it. I stopped trying to appear normal. I became a man consumed by a single thought. How do I survive this without losing myself completely? Every meal felt mechanical. Every laugh felt forced. Even the presence of my children, my anchors in a storm I couldn't control, reminded me of what I had failed to protect. The apartment that had once been our sanctuary now felt like a prison built from memories, lies, and lost trust. At night, I sometimes imagined walking out, leaving everything behind, taking the kids, starting somewhere new, where she is just a memory, where the betrayal is a wound that no longer bleeds daily. And yet, the thought of leaving her, of abandoning the life we shared, the love we once had, the years that cannot be undone, paralyzes me. It's as if I am caught in a vice, my heart torn between leaving and staying, between survival and attachment, between rage and longing. I have begun to understand something terrifying about love, that it can persist even when it is poisoned, that the heart can cling to someone who has already broken it, and that this clinging itself can become a slow, cruel torture. Every smile she gives me, every kind word, every gesture that once would have felt comforting now carries the weight of suspicion. Every interaction is a negotiation, a balancing act between hope and despair, trust and disbelief. And still, I write. I write because silence would be madness. I write because confessing here, to strangers who will never judge me personally, is the only way I can articulate the chaos inside. I write because love and betrayal have intertwined in a way that is both unbearable and undeniable, and I am not yet ready to let go of either. Time passed, but the ache never subsided. I began noticing how Marina gradually lost that spark in my eyes and thoughts, the magic that had drawn me to her all those years ago. At first, I blamed her, then myself, and eventually life itself, for being so fragile, for letting something I believed unbreakable fracture so completely. I tried again to reach out to her, to talk, to ask about her feelings, about what she wanted, what she sought, but every conversation ended in a dead end. She was polite, careful with her words, but there was no warmth, no real presence, nothing that could fill the chasm between us. It felt as though I was speaking to a stranger who remembered my name. One evening, after the children had gone to sleep, I summoned the courage for a conversation I had avoided for weeks. I sat across from her at the kitchen table, and we just looked at each other for a long, unbearable moment, the silence pressing harder than any words could. Finally, I said, "Marina, I don't know if we can go back to what we had, if we can ever trust each other again." Her eyes flickered with a mixture of regret and fear. She said quietly, almost whispering, "I don't know either, Alex. I never wanted to hurt you. I just felt lost. And when I looked for something, I found it in the wrong place. I didn't mean to break everything." Her words hit me like a wave, sincere, but insufficient. I wanted to believe them, wanted to reach across the table and pull her back into the life we had once shared. And yet, the reality of what had happened, the image of her with someone else, remained stubbornly imprinted in my mind. Forgiveness seemed like a mountain too high to climb. We talked for hours that night, not about Dmitri, not about betrayal, but about us, about who we were, who we had become, and whether there was any way to rebuild something that could survive. There were tears, broken sentences, long pauses where neither of us knew what to say. I realized that love, while powerful, does not erase pain. It can exist alongside hurt, coexist with disappointment, but it cannot erase the truth. In the weeks that followed, we tried to reconnect in small ways. We cooked together, played with the kids, laughed at old jokes. There were moments, fleeting, fragile, when I could almost pretend nothing had happened. But the underlying tension never disappeared. I couldn't forget, and she couldn't completely reassure me. Trust, once shattered, leaves invisible cracks that run deep. I began to understand something I hadn't before, that life doesn't always give us closure. Sometimes, survival means accepting the things that cannot be fixed. Loving someone doesn't always mean being together in the same way. It means choosing, every day, whether to nurture the fragments left behind or let them crumble entirely. I decided to stay, at least for the time being, for the children, for the shared years, and because part of me still loved her too much to walk away. But staying came with boundaries, with cautious steps, with the quiet knowledge that things would never be the same. I learned to accept that love can be painful, and that heartbreak can coexist with devotion. I learned that forgiveness is not always a grand declaration, but a small, ongoing decision to live despite the scars. Some nights, I lie awake and stare at the ceiling, feeling the ache, remembering the betrayal, but also remembering the early days of our love. And though it hurts, I also feel a fragile, stubborn hope, not the naive certainty of before, but a tempered hope that even fractured love can find a way to endure, if not fully, then enough to keep us moving forward. I write this here because I needed someone, anyone, to witness it. To confess that love is not simple, that betrayal leaves invisible wounds, and that surviving it requires both courage and resignation. I am Alexander, 42 years old, a husband betrayed, a father, and a man still learning what it means to live with both love and loss in the same heartbeat.